Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for checking out my video. This is questions from comments 14, the Songwriter edition. There really isn't like different editions, but I just really wanted to say the Songwriter edition. But it is a question that came in regarding songwriting, which is a subject that I don't really get to talk about too terribly much. I probably could do a bit more on that, but in any case, let's read the question. Thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. If you haven't yet, hope you'll do so now. Lots of ways you can support my channel. Those are in the description. The question came in. Songwriting question for you. If I have ideas for lyrics that I want to write and sing, but I'm not a composer-producer, what advice would you give someone like me? How can I find someone to create the background music for covers or original songs? The individual here hasn't specified a genre, and so methods of production can differ quite greatly. And that kind of changes the advice I would give. Regardless of previous musical ability, though, I think that there's a few different pathways forward. And then as you get deeper and deeper into any given genre, then they may change. But for starters, I would get an affiliation before I started to get too far down that path. I wouldn't want to have you start putting your lyrics and things like that out there without some amount of performance royalty organization representation. Now, to say that it's representation is loose, to say the least. I'm BMI. I've never so much as spoken to anyone from BMI, but I register my works with them. And I know that if those works get played in the world, then I will be compensated. Here in the United States, BMI and ASCAP are the two main PROs, or performance royalty organizations. In the UK, PRS is a rather noteworthy performance royalty organization. They do not cover the entire world. So in your local area, you will have to figure out who the PRO is for your country and the regions that they will be able to collect royalties on your behalf for. You cannot collect performance royalties directly. It has to be done through a PRO. Here there's also now another company called Sound Exchange, which was established via an act of Congress here in the United States some years ago. And they collect royalties for US artists throughout the rest of the world. So you don't have to go and try and become a member of all these different organizations around the world. Sound Exchange here in the US will do that for you. There may be other organizations in your region, in your home country, that do similar things. Or it's possible that your local performance royalty organization will do that for you. That may seem like putting the cart before the horse, in a manner of speaking, but I think it's important to put these things in place early on, because the last thing that you want to do is to have an enormous back catalog of materials in various states of completion, various states of release, that you then have to spend loads of time figuring out the organization of which and getting it all into your PRO. Do it first, make it a habit, and you'll always be covered in that regard. Now, this doesn't cover you entirely in terms of copyright infringement. For that, you would have to file, here in the US, it's with the Library of Congress, and it's usually copyright form SR, sound recording. There are different ones for different applications, but that's a good place to start, and that will probably, for the most part, cover you if you're creating an album. And you can do that collectively in the case of this individual who might be doing co-writes or hiring people to write backing tracks and things like that. You can still file that form SR and be covered from a copyright perspective. Now, in terms of the actual construction of these tracks, there are short-term solutions and there are long-term solutions. And oftentimes the short-term solutions are going to cost you a bit of money. The long-term solutions are going to cost you some time. But here's the thing. You can still do the long-term solutions while executing perhaps on a few of the short-term solutions. I would suggest trying to find a collaborator. I think that will get you the closest match artistically with someone that you're working with regularly. Now, that collaborator may still be a paid individual. You may be paying them for the tracks, but if they are someone who has an affordable price and can think about the long-term relationship, and I'm not suggesting you use that as a means by which to, cajole them into cutting their rates, but if they're accustomed to creating tracks and they're accustomed to working with artists over a long time period, then the music and the lyrics will match really, really nicely, and you will get, hopefully, a more satisfying overall artistic experience out of it. Getting back to that whole performance royalty organization thing, it's nice when they're in the same PRO as you, but it's not entirely necessary. In the categorization of works, when you submit a work for the PRO, generally speaking, it breaks up into thirds. A third is assigned to the lyric writing, a third is assigned to the melody, and a third is generally assigned to the chord changes. Now, you can't copyright chord changes, but just in how we divvy up writing and publishing credits, that's usually the three subjects that get talked about. Now, in hip hop and other genres, you can also talk about beat, track, and groove construction as well, and that's a different matter in the way that you divide up the percentage of ownership of a given track. But realize that if you're creating tracks and you're going to be releasing them and things like that, if all you're contributing is the lyrics to it, then you're looking at about a 33.3% ownership of those tracks once they're released. You might be able to negotiate different terms. It all comes down to negotiations with those things. That's something that you'll have to talk about, but I would say that you should at least be prepared for that should it come up in conversation. And like establishing an affiliation with BMI or ASCAP, PRS, I would do that conversation early on in the process. Now, you might try to find someone who will do a work for hire for you. This is tricky, and it probably means that you have to get some legal representation early on in the process. This means it's going to be more expensive. However, in a work for hire, you will own entirely the track. The thing is, and this is why legal representation gets involved, is because I believe it was in the 1960s, the law changed so a songwriter could no longer sign away their rights to their recordings. You perhaps have heard stories about how the Beatles catalog was sold to this individual, or Michael Jackson owned it for a while, and then Paul McCartney was finally able to purchase it back. That's because before this law changed, recording artists might write a song, go to the recording studio, their label would say, okay, this is awesome, we're going to cut this today, we're going to pay you £500 or $500, please sign this contract stating that you're signing away all of your rights. And that used to be the way this was done. Those old blues artists from back in the early days of recorded music often, even though their songs are still played today, don't make anything in terms of royalties because of contracts like that. Well, that all changed. And this is why a work for hire can be very tricky, and you can't probably do it on your own. That makes it more expensive, but if owning all of the publishing and writing credits as represented to your PRO is important to you, that may be something to look into. Again, you will probably need legal representation, and I would highly recommend you talk to an entertainment lawyer specifically. In terms of finding collaborators that you might work with just in general, Craigslist, Gumtree can be good places to start. From there, you'll find other music forums and things like that. I hate to say it, I'll just spell it, GEARSLUTZ.com. Probably you can find collaborators and things like that there. Always be conscientious about whom you're, that you're contacting people online and these websites and stuff like that. Don't wire money over to these people, establish a relationship and stuff like that. Just be cautious, use your time wisely. But Craigslist is a great way to find other people who are making music, who might be able to collaborate. You might do a search for writers' rounds in your area. If you're in Nashville, this is a readily available resource. You can find loads of people, go and sit in on writing rounds, hear what people are doing, talk to them, get to know them, see with whom they're working with, and meet other people that you can then work with as well. Again, this is a long kind of prospect there. That's going to take some time. While you are searching Craigslist, while you're thinking about a work for hire, while you're seeking out collaborators that are either in a paid or unpaid capacity and they're still taking a percentage in the PRO aspect of things, you might consider digging into GarageBand or Logic or other DAWs. They have lots and lots of pre-recorded sounds and patterns and things like that, very generic strumming things and stuff that you can just drag and drop into the sort of edit window, if you will, and create your own tracks. This, of course, is going to give you the most artistic control, but it also does have a learning curve. That being said, I'm not sure which is going to go faster. Learning to use the programs to start off by using what they have available and then figuring out what you want and then learning to get that. Because it's really, really easy to find guitar players that will just play a straight up kind of chord change, you know, just a strummed. It's not hard to find people to do that. It's a different matter to find people when you're talking about writing songs. But the point here is that the programs themselves, and if you're using an Apple, then I think GarageBand is free, it's just a download away, have loads and loads of royalty-free, readily available resources for your disposal. You might search Getty Images. They have lots and lots of royalty-free music. I feel a bit funny recommending that because, of course, people recorded that music and they should be compensated. I used to have a contract with Getty Images that I broke. I decided to leave that contract because they wanted me to sign a royalty-free agreement, and I said I did not wish to do that. So I feel a bit funny about that. I don't know where YouTube sources their royalty-free music, but you might also look there that you might find something that works for the tracks that you are working on. And of course, I'm holding this guitar. If you're working on pop or folk tunes that generally would have an acoustic guitar or something like this in it, 90% of those songs are just 4 chords. And learning those 4 chords probably won't take very much time. And once you have a capo, you have a variety of key areas that you can explore. And when it's time to cut the recording, you can get a guitar player and a bass player and all those other people if you want. But it leaves you, it frees you up to start the process. And you can be learning those 4 chords all the while that you're working with collaborators and trying to figure out what's the best path forward for you. If it's beat creation and things like that, then you can always start working in the DAW. But basically, I think the most important thing is to get started as soon as you possibly can. If you can find an inexpensive guitar, this isn't an inexpensive guitar, but they can be had. You can get an inexpensive guitar, an inexpensive capo, learn those 4 chords, learn to do them in a different order, and then use your capo to find different keys. Boom, you're starting to write songs. And I think the best part about that is that you'll really be able to work on doing your melodies, your songs the way that you want to do them, not relying on someone else to deliver a track to you that you then have to say, well, it doesn't sound quite right. Can you change something about it? And trying to figure out what that something is. It's initially kind of limiting, but in the long term, I think it will facilitate your writing much better than some of the other suggestions that are available to you when you're just getting started and you don't have any kind of instrumental or production chops. Although you haven't said you're not an instrumentalist, so maybe you play. If you play, then all of this hopefully will help. But I'd like to know more about it. If you want, please leave a comment and I can perhaps address it in another video or in the comments. For those of you out there that write songs, I'd love to hear your process. Do you do works for hire? Do you find collaborators? Could we offer some more thoughts for this person who's looking to get into the songwriting game? I do really think it's important to get affiliated, though, sooner than later, just so that you have some representation for the work that you are creating. All right, thank you for an awesome question. I hope this helps. My name's Jeff. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy songwriting, and we'll see you again. Bye.